So we've done sleeping mats, we've done sleeping bags, and now we are on to tents. There are a whole bunch of considerations for tents. Tents, they are a bit of a financial outlay. You can be looking for around £100–150 for a basic one. So before you buy a tent, we recommend try and borrow one first or try and buy one second hand.
Right, we've got 5 different tents that we're going to show you today. We've got a couple of dome tents that have the flexible bendy poles. We've got one tent that is going to be pitched using trekking poles or hiking poles. And then we've got a couple of smaller one-man tents to look at.
So this tent is a small one-person tent. I actually used to sleep in this with a friend as well, but in those days we had really thin foam mats, and that meant that even though the mats were overlapping, we were still comfortable. I've tried it since with thick mats and it just doesn't work. It's a really good simple design, it's really stable, it's got a single pole that supports it, guy lines to hold it out, and plenty of room for one person to sleep in here, and room to get your kit inside, which is something that you perhaps need to think about, is whether you want to have your rucksack, your boots and things like that inside the tent, or whether you're happy to have them outside. This tent has a vestibule, which is a covered porch area, I suppose we could call it, so that when you close it up there's still space in this covered area, and you can, if you need to, use that as cooking space in wet weather. So when it's wet, pop that peg in and you've got space to sit inside the tent, sheltered from the rain, and have your stove just outside here. You need to be careful if you are cooking in your tent though. Fires happen easily and it can go very wrong very quickly. This tent is pretty old now. I think it's about 25 years old, and I've had it a really long time. Because of that, it now seems actually quite heavy for a one-man tent, and you can certainly get much lighter one-man tents now as materials and fabrics have moved on. It weighs just over 2 kilograms, which, you know, for one person to carry is now considered quite a lot. That said, these are available second-hand for about 30 quid. They're solid, good tents. Despite the fact of them being old, they're likely to still be in pretty good condition. So if your budget is really tight, a tent like this, you could go a lot worse, really.
Right, so this is your basic lower end of the market for price-wise 3-person tent. It's a Van Gogh. It's a very common brand for people starting out. It's a semi-geodesic. I can't say it.
Yeah, it's a semi-geodesic tent, which means that it does need a couple of pegs to help it hold its shape.
And it's got a porch at the front, a small one, just big enough to put your bags in, put your boots in. The design at the front, the way the door opens, and you're pretty rainproof to start with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
good thing about
it's
it.
a very good.
It's also plenty big enough for 3 people, even with, you know, decent size, the bigger, more modern, wide mats. Plenty of room.
You're going to say modern wide, mate. Women.
This is really good if you're going with friends. It is heavy. It weighs about 3.5 kilograms. But if there's 3 of you carrying it, one carrying the poles, one carrying the inner, and one carrying the outer, you know, it's okay. It's about just over 1 kilogram each. If you're going with friends, it's a great option, and they're cheap. So this tent is another 3-person tent. It's significantly lighter than the other 3-person tent that we're showing you today. This one weighs 1.6 kilograms, the other one weighs 3.5, so, you know, a massive weight saving. The compromise on this tent, and the reason why it's lighter, is that the fabric it's made of is much thinner. And I've been in bad weather in this tent, and although it has always kept me dry, it doesn't sort of fill me with confidence that it's going to. These very lightweight tents, when they're dome tents that come with poles, that is often the compromise, is the weight of the fabrics involved. And it's just something you need to think about. You might also have noticed on the video of us pitching it, it pitches with the inner first, and then the poles, and then the outer waterproof layer on top, which can definitely cause problems in really heavy rain, because there's a period of time when the tent isn't waterproof and you will be getting water into the sleeping area as the tent goes up. That may or may not be a problem for you, depending where you're taking it and what kind of weather you're camping in. It's got a small porch area, but as you can see, the way it opens up means that if it's raining, practically the whole of the porch is going to be getting water in. So as you come in and out, it's a little more prone to dragging water into the tent with you because it's not quite as covered. Also, it's a little bit of a squeeze to get in and out in the night, but you're all sleeping in here. There's not a lot of room. You have to turn around and turn yourselves to get out of the tent without kicking your friends in the head. This isn't a cheap tent. We think they retail for about £300.
Something like that, yeah.
Round about £300. So yeah, definitely not a cheap option.
We've got here a solo Alp kit tent. It's a one-man tent. It's far roomier actually than it looks. I can lay quite comfortably and I've got plenty of room spare. I'm quite short, but I can sit, and there's a good 6 inches above my head, so you can sit up in it, but it is a little tight. It's 1.2 kilos. You haven't got much of a porch area, and you are not covered from the rain once you've opened the door. So getting in and out, you are going to bring water into the tent. You have also got to kind of crawl out like this, so you've obviously ideally want to just put a little something down on front of the tent so that you're not crawling in and out. But as a basic budget tent, it's a quite nice size. This is an inner pitch first, so obviously if you're pitching in bad weather, you're going to get a little bit of rain on your tent just for the short period while you're pitching.
This tent is a little bit different to the others because it doesn't come with its own poles. Instead, it uses hiking poles to support it. Now, if you don't usually hike with hiking poles, this might not be the right solution for you. But if, like me, you often do hike with hiking poles, it's brilliant because you're not carrying 2 sets of poles, one to walk with and one to pitch your tent with. It comes out at 1,400 grams, so 1.4 kilograms, but it's a 2-person tent, so it's 700 grams per person, which is absolutely nothing. It's also enormous. It's got plenty of space inside here for 2 really big, thick, wide pads. It's really long, so if you happen to be over 6 foot tall, you've still got room to put your rucksack down by your feet. And when this door is closed, you've got a good covered porch space, plenty big enough for your rucksack, or at a push, your stove if you needed to cook under here. The other thing I quite like about it is that this inner drops down out of the way if you want it to, so you can use this tent as a daytime shelter just with the outer up and sit in it and have lunch if the weather's really, really nasty.
You can see this is a really big tent for 2 people. There is absolutely loads of room, and in fact they do say that if you've got narrow pads, you can drop the height of the inner slightly to widen out the floor and fit 3 people in here. This particular model I imported from America, which does make them pretty expensive, but there is a cheap Chinese copy on the market that is just over 100 quid for a very similar setup.
The fabric is a little bit tougher than the other lightweight tents we've got, and that's because you're not carrying the weight of the pole, so for the same amount of weight you can afford to have a sturdier fabric. This tent has also got 2 doors, which means you don't need to climb over your partner if you're sharing the tent in order to get out in the middle of the night. Hammocks can be a really comfortable way to spend the night. They can be a little bit cold underneath, so sometimes people put a sleeping mat inside the hammock to keep their bums warm. Otherwise you can actually get like little quilt sleeping bags that you hang underneath just to give you a bit more warmth, and then a sleeping bag over the top. It's nice.
The very last type of shelter we're going to show you this evening is just a quick tarp to sling up, perhaps over a bivvy bag or even without one. So Dee's just clearing off the ground a little bit to make a bit of way, and then we're just going to try and hang the tarp to protect our sleeping space from any dew or rain overnight.
Bivvy option, hammock, they're all very, very low budget. So I mean, you can pick up a hammock for 15 quid, They go upwards, you can get any kind of number. The tarp again, this is ex-army, so you're talking £15–20. And the bivvies again, you can start with the Gore-Tex ex-army and they're about £20. So you can get yourself a complete setup for under 50 quid, probably under 30.
So cheaper than a tent,
Very,
really.
yeah, very cheap.
Yeah.
Much more versatile than a tent.
I think they probably require a little bit more skill to do well. There's definitely, you want to go out and practice before you go out for your first night in the rain.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a lot of fun to be had. So yeah, really great option.
And they also make a good day shelter, so if you are hiking, they go up so quickly. If you were wanting to shelter for your lunch, they're brilliant.
So we've shown you 5 different tents today. I would say if you're just starting out, don't spend a lot on your first tent. You're probably going to get it wrong. You're probably going to find that actually, you know, you've made a mistake and you don't quite like it. You're going to end up buying another one or another 5 or 10 over the years. So, you know, as we said, buy second-hand, try them out. The second-hand market is fabulous. If you don't like what you've got, you haven't spent much money on it and you can sell it on second-hand. So we've taken all the tents down now and we've taken a walk round the site just to make sure that we haven't left anything behind. And as you can see, the only sign that we've been here is the flattened grass.